I think that's a good segue into the publishing company because now you now have all this information about books and what people like and how you consume and create. And so, talk to us a little bit about Elizabeth and Minnie, your partnership, and what
Yes.
inspired you to start this company.
So excited to talk about Elizabeth and Minnie. I feel like, it is one of these natural evolutions. So when I started the Tanya Time Book Club, I had this really big community. And one of the things that became very stark to me was not just the community and how much they consumed the books that we loved and that I was putting out to it, but how many people were direct messaging me, reaching out, being like, I'm an author. I have written this great book. I can't get an agent. I can't get anybody to look at my book. Can you help me? Can you help me market it? Can you help me promote it to your audience? And this just didn't happen once or twice. This was like every day I was getting manuscripts or people to help me and people asking for my help. And granted, I know a lot of that comes from having an Instagram following that's directly related to a show, et cetera, having some sort of notoriety, of course. But what I really started to look into was how broken the publishing industry was. This how much of a legacy industry publishing was. And what I mean by that is, in the publishing world, there's probably five predominant houses. Everybody knows their names. They are hundreds of years old. And just to be honest, typically they are run by white family men that have owned them for years, right? So we've seen this in tons of different industries, but it still remains in publishing. There's five sort of monarchies that control all the books. And so for a lot of the people that were reaching out to me, they were saying, listen, I was looking at who they were. I was going across um the ethnicities, and they're predominantly Black people who had a lot of them had great stories. Now some were not good, but I understood why this industry was so broken. And if you take three steps back and understand how you publish a book right now, oftentimes you have to go on Twitter, search hashtag manuscript wish list, find an agent that may or may not be accepting submissions, send it off blindly into the ethos and hope someone writes you back. Now, if you're famous, like Beyonce, and you have four different agents and you've got United Talent Agency and all these people, and they're begging you to write a book, it's a very different story. Or if, for example, you have 500,000 people on Instagram and you're not that famous, but you're sort of famous, people will pay attention. And so I wanted to be able to help some of these early stage authors get their stories out, because I would be reading them and I'd be like, this is actually really good. Nobody wants to publish this. Um, and then conversely, I was also talking to some of my other authors, for example, Peace Adomezi, who wrote one of my favorite books, His Only Wife, and it's set in like a rural village in Ghana, but in modern day times. But she's talking about things and in a way that are very Ghanaian. She would mention the food. She would mention fufu, which I grew up eating. And she would talk about, with her editors who were predominantly white, because that's what the publishing industry looks like right now. And they'd be like, well, I don't understand what fufu is. Could you give me more information about how to eat fufu? And it's weird if you say, she rolled it up, which is a very inherently cultural thing. And, this author would push back and she'd be like, well, I grew up in Ghana. I didn't have hot dogs, to be honest with you, but I understood when I was reading a book about what a hot dog was, you didn't have to explain it. And she'd be like, well, that's not going to fly in America. And having to stand on business when you're like, I'm not going to spell out what fufu is. My readers are smart and I'm not going to underestimate my community. So I'm just saying we're eating fufu and figure it out. And so those are sort of the nuances of all these things that were swirling around. And I wanted to be able to do more. And so I started wanting an imprint of my own. So what I thought I wanted was one of the big fives to give me an imprint so I could steward more stories to the big five. And then I realized that wasn't what I wanted either. And in order to sort of do more for the system, do more for the people I wanted to serve, I really realized that I needed to have my own sort of autonomy and I couldn't be constrained by the system that was pre-existing. And how did I do something to really break the mold? And I was introduced to my business partner, Janelle English. She had a long history at the Academy Awards, the Oscars as well, working in DEI. She was, really integral in the entertainment world. And so we met and we had this incredible conversation. And it was like sort of a light bulb went off. And we were like, we need to do a publishing company of our own. So we are two Black women We founded Elizabeth and Minnie. It is named after both of my grandmother and her great grandmother, who were both in publishing and writers. So we're bringing in all that legacy and ancestry. And our goal and our mission at Elizabeth and Minnie is to really uplift and elevate voices of color, predominantly women, from all backgrounds. So Black, Latino, Middle Eastern, Asian American, LGBTQ, and tell and amplify those stories. And also help those authors navigate and take those stories to screen simultaneously as we publish their books.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And how do you think about this, right? So, because I think on one hand, what's made obviously these big publishers really big is their access to either celebrity or also these backlists. Like backlists is huge, right? So
Yep.
my question kind of is, do you and when you're thinking about your imprint, are you thinking more in the terms of, hey, we need a smash hit out front, or is like, hey, we need to build up a strong backlist or multitude of stories to kind of push forward?
So we look at ourselves as a boutique publishing house. In 2025, we'll do 7 to 10 titles. Probably in 2026, we'll do 7 to 10. Of course, we want smash hits. We want the golden ticket. Absolutely. The beautiful thing about this is we have a very steady stream of submissions that are coming in. And we've got some great titles that you will see coming out in 2025. I think people are going to love them. And one thing about this is we're very intentional about how we've sort of curated our community to cultivate and consume the content. So I feel like that alignment there will give us sort of a lift that will take us sort of to the next level as well, for sure, for sure. And then I think the other piece to this is, I think oftentimes when people are building businesses, I've worked with founders for, over 10 years, you have to have a little bit of realism. Building any sort of business, it is not easy. I have been fortunate that I've helped many people. I've ran accelerator programs, whether it's in technology, startups, and any startup that you built is very difficult. And so I think that has afforded me the ability to just know that every day you have to get up, you have to set milestones and KPIs and just keep making progress. Don't get discouraged when things don't go as fast as you think they would, or as how other people think they would. You just have to keep making progress and stay aligned to your mission and your goals. And the base hits will end up as home runs.
Yeah, that's well said. And classic question, but say I'm as an author, how do I come to your publishing company and kind of the steps there?
Yes. Okay. So Elizabeth and Minnie, you can go to our website or you can go to our Instagram, which will lead you to our website. And on there, you'll see tabs for like what we do, our mission statements, who we are, so that you can learn a little bit more about us. And in particular, our submission forms. So there is a submission link on there. We are accepting submissions for fiction stories by voices of color, women of color, white women as well. Like, we want to hear your stories. And you can submit it there. The terms and conditions are there. We will basically review them, and then we will get back to you to say whether or not it's a fit for us, whether we're interested. Like I said, we are a boutique, so our 2025 slate is filling up very, very quickly. And then I think one of the things that's very special about us, like, we are building family. So as we look to decide like how we pick our authors, how we pick our books, it's really about also what our community will love, what we know will sell with our community, and what we know we will sell. So we don't want all of the same. Absolutely not. We want to be able to give our community tons of great reads that allows them to explore different cultures. So right now we are exploring an Iranian author. She's a female. She's written this incredible story. We have a Black male author that tells his story, it's a very, very literary, powerful story through his life in Detroit, growing up through the crack epidemic. Some really great stories. We have a fantasy Latina author that will blow your mind. She's a very, very young author, but she has written this prolific story about Mayan ruins. So we are seeing a gamut a gamut of submissions. So excited to hear if you guys are working on anything. We want to read it, we want to see it, we want to hear from you. And then I will say this about the authors. We also are really intentional about picking authors who understand how to market books. And I think this is really interesting because once upon a time, a lot of authors were like, well, I can't get my foot in the door in publishing because I don't have a huge following. And we understand that. And we know that you don't need, you might have 1,000 followers, but you might be a great artist. But partnering together, we will help make you a rock star. We've got great marketing tools and tips and tricks. We've got, teams that we sort of put behind each book to do special marketing platforms and programs because we want you to be successful. We want you to grow a fan base that cannot wait for your next book, that loves you. I will say there's a certain author that I really love. Her name is V.E. Schwab. She writes incredible fantasy. She's one of my favorite authors. And when I tell you the fans of this woman, people have tattooed her characters, her face. Like, that is the goal. When people love our authors so much that they're sending in, oh my gosh, I got a fictional character tattooed on my arm. That's amazing. That's truly amazing.
If you enjoyed that clip, make sure you head over to www.bookupapp.com to download our app so you can connect with your favorite bookish content creators, start conversations, and start your own book club.